Hi, everyone. I'm Dan McDermott. Welcome. Alan is arrived. Um, okay, so let's
Wow,
start.
that's a real stellar opening there, Dan. We've come a
Um,
long way on our openings, haven't we?
it's more efficient. So there's actually a story linked to this first topic, but let's just talk about I/O and the story. But I/O is coming up. You'll be there, and I
Yeah.
understand there's a thing about what to wear and protection so you don't catch a sunburn. There was some posting about that from our
Yeah,
friend
so
Danny.
so let's remind everybody what IO is first, and please confirm that you can actually hear me.
Yep, you
And I'm
sound
not.
great.
Okay. To remind everyone what Google I/O is, it is their annual developer conference. At least officially, it's their developer conference. That means that they have a keynote address where they don't actually talk about stuff that developers care about. Um, and they show off all sorts of new products that have nothing to do with developing for Google. That said, this is their 10th Google I/O, so they're making a big deal of it. And the nifty part of the big deal is that instead of holding it in downtown San Francisco, where they usually do, it will be literally in Google's backyard in a concert pavilion called the Shoreline Amphitheater, which basically means they're setting up a bunch of tents in the parking lot of the Shoreline Amphitheater for people to attend, and they're having some events in the concert area itself. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of outdoor activity. There are some early pictures from Shoreline, and it makes it look like it is a carnival that came to town. Um, there's about 10 stages worth of stuff, tents and presentations. And yeah, anybody who's actually going there should bring sunscreen
It seems like I've
and
been through
water.
a few of these. Uh,
We've been through five of them, Dan.
this is the
This will
fifth.
be our this will be our fifth one.
Well, here's my observation. At first, they were really exciting because this new Google Plus thing was happening, and that was two or three cool ones. Then Google Plus had some minor issues of adoption, and anyway, then it was like depressing. And it was like, well, they're not talking about Plus anymore. I guess it's dead or whatever. And now I think we're over that, and it's on the rebound. Like the housing market, it's slow but steady coming back. And I think I'm optimistic that there'll be some cool things. I don't think there was a lot. Like the goodie bag was pretty sparse last time.
Hey, we got another cardboard last year. What are you talking about?
Oh, okay. There you go.
But it's honestly it's not about the goodie bag. Last year we got where's my tablet here?
And I mean, just
You know,
in general, the vibe I
last
have about
last
IO, I'm more
last year we got
optimistic.
a nice Nexus 9,
Mm-hmm.
very very slick. I've used it about 5 times. Um, but what did I not use it for? Um, but it's not about the goodie bag. It's about the people. It's about meeting these developer advocates, meeting the engineers, meeting the people that you only meet once a year at I/O, and talking to them and learning from them and having a beer with them. That's what it's about. It's the keynote is cool. Throwing Sergey out a balloon onto the ground. That's always fun to watch. Um, and who knows what they're going to do this year. It's a brand new space. They can do all sorts of different things. YouTube 360 Live is going, and I predict you guys at home are going to be able to watch it in 360 live video.
So this will work
Um,
just with my regular phone and my cardboard, right?
I think so. I don't know. I've never done YouTube 360 Live before.
I assume they're gonna support their product versus the Oculus, but I guess it'll be working both, right? I
Well,
don't know.
that starts getting into the first question, doesn't it? So one of the things every year is that they always surprise us with something. 2 years ago, they surprised us with cardboard. This year, the speculation, the rampant rumor is that there's a product called Android VR, and everyone's guessing what it could be. Is it a standalone VR product? Is it something that works with a phone? Is it competition for Oculus Rift? How does it fit into cardboard? There's a lot of questions about it right now, and we'll see what it is.
So there's a lot of on that notion. There's a lot of Android versus iPhone, right? iOS. Um, and it's like the Cowboys and the Redskins football, whatever.
Well,
But there's not a lot of stuff you can do on one that you can't do on the other, and it's not enough of that to say you got to have an iPhone, you got to have an Android for this reason. If they could come up with some sort of amazing VR game ability that was Android specific, you could see an argument, especially
well,
the
well,
younger
well,
demographics who
two
tend to get
things.
Android anyway because they can't afford an iPhone.
Two things on that. The first is, the two platforms are so similar these days that they're even making an app for I/O. For the first time, there is an Apple app for I/O. So, previously you could only use your Android device to find out what's going on. Now there's an iOS app too. This is the first year they're doing it.
So now the Google
Um,
employees can use the app because they've never been hostile to iOS. I mean, they've talked
no,
about it.
far from it. There have been there have been iPhone developers at Apple for years. One of my best friends is an iPhone developer at Google.
And in the
Um,
show, we're going to talk about a very snazzy iPhone app that they just came out with.
so but second is, yeah, with VR being the big trendy thing, um, them coming out with an Android VR, it's actually I don't think you're going to see it as a big differentiator against the iPhone. I think they're doing it because they need to keep their head above water in a field of sharks. Samsung is there, HTC is there. They've got to show that they're on board with this. Now, why they're not showing they're on board with this with cardboard, I don't know, but we'll find out details Wednesday morning, I assume.
So you'll be there. It's the keynote's Wednesday or
The keynote, everything kicks off Wednesday morning at 10 a.m.
Pacific.
Pacific.
So I get to sleep in. You will be jet lagged. You will be
Yeah,
even grouchier, and I'll be even nicer than usual.
right.
Um,
Now, I'll probably be up at about 4 a.m. Pacific time, eager to get there. The gates open at 7 a.m.
oh my
They just
God.
announced that today. So gates open at 7 a.m. So hopefully the bike parking will be open at that time as well, because I'll be biking there.
Hopefully Elon or his friends will get this Hyperloop thing working so that they can actually have I/O wherever they want, not next to Google.
D- Are you kidding me?
Well, that's the reason they have to have it there, right? Because so many Googlers attend to be too logistically challenging and expensive to ship all those people over there.
Nah, it's trivial to ship them downtown.
No, I mean like to Vegas or New York City or
Oh,
something.
nah, it would be cheaper to ship them to Vegas. Come on, Dan, you got to realize their engineering teams, twice a year they go on team building exercises in Europe. The that's
When they
not
should
the issue
rather,
here.
it's a shame they're not spending that time fixing all the bugs in their
They
products.
are spending that time fixing the bugs, Dan. We can talk about that another time. Um, no, but you know, we want to talk. Make sure we talk about Hyperloop later, so I can tell you how much bullshit that is. Um, no, I mean but transportation is going to be a fucking nightmare. I mean, truly a nightmare. There are people staying in, there are I think nine hotels that were recommended where they're running shuttle buses from, plus a shuttle bus from the local train station. Um, and everything, all my sources are telling me that they are predicting a traffic disaster. That Mountain View is preparing for one of the worst traffic situations they've ever had. So I'm biking there.
How many people are involved?
Honestly, we don't know how many people are at I/O this year. In the past, there have been about 6,000 attendees
That's nothing.
plus Googlers.
That's a small Trump rally.
Um,
That's a small Bernie Sanders rally.
no, a small Bernie Sanders rally is 60,000.
You'd think that a venue that could accommodate that many people would have adequate entry, exit, and parking. But maybe in California they don't do things like we do.
Well, here's the thing: as a concert venue, it doesn't normally support that many, and it supports it in terms of a concert. How many times, have you ever been to a concert, Dan?
I have.
And was there a traffic jam trying to get there?
Yeah, you always leave like before the last song if you want to get out,
Right, right. You see,
or you
nobody's going
hang
to leave
out
before the
afterward,
last
and
song.
you have a
Everybody's going to get there early, and the parking lot is filled with everything else. So you don't even have parking. So they're assuming people are going to be taking shuttle buses over.
yeah. California is a whole different thing. You people or those people are nuts. So, all right, are we
So,
good?
there's
Or
so IO will, we'll see what's going on with IO next week. Starts Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The big keynote is on Wednesday. Um, I have a collection where I'll be posting my posts, and I welcome people to follow it. I'll be posting some interesting news there over the next few days as well. Um, the Google developers also have an IO an IO collection where they will be posting their observations. They've got a bunch of community managers who will be on the ground answering your questions. So if you have questions, feel free to direct some to me. I will try to answer them, but definitely direct it to the CMs because that's what they're supposed to be doing. Um, if you are not coming to San Francisco, if you are one of these smart people, the keynote will be live streamed. A number of other things will also be live streamed. I encourage you to find a local IO extended event. And these are hundreds of events all around the world where you'll be able to watch the keynote and connect up with locals who are just as interested and insane as you are. And you won't have to worry about getting a sunroof.
don't they even do them? They do them overseas, right?
What was that?
They do them overseas, right?
They do them everywhere. I mean, these are local groups that have organized to run viewing parties, basically. But there are some added benefits to it as well. Um,
Pizza.
well, besides the pizza, you also get T-shirts.
There you go.
Um, but more importantly, it's that you're networking with other developers near you. So, part of, really the big deal about I/O, it's not the swag, it's not the keynote, it's not even the presentations. It's the networking with people. I've made some great connections through I/O. And by connections, I mean with developers and with Google engineers. These are the guys that, 6 months from now, when I'm having trouble with something in Google Cloud or Google Vision or AI, I can send them a message and say, hey, what's going on here? Does it, have you guys seen this before? And, sometimes they'll say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Here's the better place to ask. And then sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, good call. Yeah, we'll get back to you. So these are valuable meetings.
Yeah, and if an I attended an IO satellite party doesn't get you laid, then there's just you're beyond help. Get some T-shirts.
Well, it depends on who's at the party and
If there's beer with the
what
pizza.
your kink is.
And Jeff Stoner wants to have an IO event here in Front Royal. We're probably, Jeff, you and I are probably the only two people who know what IO is, I would guess. Maybe a couple others. So anyway, you'll probably talk more at the end of the show about that. Google Plus has a new iOS app. I don't know if they updated Android, since my Android devices are not usable because
You know,
Google abandons them.
Dan, I really wish this wasn't on the original list of stories that you proposed. This is so not a story. This is the fifth update to the iOS app this year.
You don't think it's an exciting pre-IO challenge to
No,
this could be bigger than the Nexus Q or not? Um,
we're voting not.
it's not much there. It's 5.6.0. You can share interesting articles with the share menu. Swiped it. Yeah, just accessibility fix. A GIF in a GIF. Is it? What did you decide? GIF or GIF? I think you said GIF because it stands for graphic interchange format, so it should be pronounced with a hard G, like graphic. But
It's a GIF. The
but
people who call it GIF, including the inventor, are idiots.
um, and there is precedent for Alan's arrogance on this issue because the car, the Jaguar, is what we call it in the U.S., but in England, where they created it, they call it the Jaguar. You'd think they'd be allowed to decide how it's pronounced, especially in the same tongue. All right, so anyway, that's happened. All right, next is a really
You're gonna
cool.
ride. You're gonna surf your Gboard, Dan.
Yeah, so this is pretty cool. I actually did feedback for this. You'll be impressed because I never do feedback. It's called Gboard, and what it does is it adds a little Google thing to your keyboard. It's a separate keyboard. You have to turn it on. Or is it a separate keyboard, or is it just adding functionality to the keyboard? I think it's a separate keyboard.
I think it's a separate keyboard, but I am only assuming that because I don't really know how iOS keyboards work. But I assume it's a separate keyboard because the built-in one sucks.
It works. I mean, I don't know. I haven't tried others to compare though.
Well,
Um,
you hunt. Never mind. Keep going.
I can
Explain
type.
to them what the hell this is.
This is a thing that adds Google search for like text results, images, and GIFs or emojis or whatever, and you can write on your keyboard in any or in most iOS apps. You can while you're typing the message, you can click the Google thing and quickly look up something. Let's say I wanted to text Alan. I actually have a friend who's doing a documentary about the Komodo dragon. He's narrating it. And so if I wanted to send him, I think I did. I sent him a Wikipedia entry as a test. So it's really cool. And I think you made the observation that Google has just, you were surprised that, that Apple allowed it and that Google has just managed to stick Google on every single iOS app that has a keyboard.
Exactly. I mean, this has got to be one of the most brilliant things Google has ever done. Certainly one of the most brilliant things that Google has ever pulled over Apple's eyes. Basically, it means that Google's inserted themselves everywhere, everywhere. And the part that is most surprising to me is that Apple's allowed it because previously Apple wasn't allowing keyboard apps that made network connections for security purposes. So either Google somehow convinced them that they're not going to do anything stupid, or they relax their rules or something. But man, this
You
is
think
just a
they paid
brilliant
him?
move.
You think they paid him?
Oh, I doubt it. Um, I think they just convinced they gave them assurances and then said, and if you don't allow this, we'll point out that you're not allowing an app, a competing app.
So I pulled up the app. I got it on the screen for the viewers. If you look here, this is a keyboard, right? You go to your regular keyboard and you hold, you install it from iTunes first, and then you have it, and then you sign in, and then you have to do a full sign in. You can't just say use it as Dan McDermott or whatever. Then once it's working, when you're in any iOS app, you have the standard keyboard and you have this world button. You press and hold the world button and then select Gboard, and then this thing here appears. And then if you're typing away, you can click that and you can type in a search for funny cat pic or whatever you're searching for, and then you can share this into in this example they're using iMessage or SMS, whatever they're using. So it's genius and it works. I think Alan, I tested it in email. I wasn't able to, the image search didn't work for me. or the image, it showed up here like this, but it didn't actually send it to Alan, nor was it in my sent folder. I tried to send him an email. So but it's, it was the first day, right? But yeah, I agree with Alan. This is genius. This is really, and it's neat. And if it gets adoption, it's good for Google, obviously. So Gboard in the iOS store. Will they have that? Is there such a thing on Android?
Oh, Dan.
I don't know.
Android has had customizable keyboards for a couple of years before Apple got it.
This
It is a little bit surprising that we don't have this particular one.
That's what
and
I'm
people are
asking. I know there's
asking for it,
customized keyboards like SwiftKey is real popular, but so they're clearly going to have a Gboard for Android
but
app.
presumably they're going to have a Gboard for Android soon.
Maybe at I/O. That's the big thing they can announce. All right. Oh shit. I mean, gosh. Okay, I accidentally deleted everything. Okay, next
Well,
is.
Key Willikers, Dan.
Oh my gosh, Beeve. Okay, so. Oh, good. It's a shame I don't have to pee because it's time for the Google Photos topic. Maybe I can squeeze one out. A quick pee. Google Photos albums getting commenting and smart suggestions. Tell us about the commenting and smart suggestions that are coming to Google Photos albums.
Yeah. Comments on photos. Wow, what a radical fucking concept. I mean, we're now this close to actually getting rid of that piece of shit known as Google Plus Photos.
Flickr
this
had
is a
like a
good
whole social network like 10 years ago, and Google's come up with
You know,
comments.
It's amazing. Now everything's getting their own social layer, and everyone is doing it slightly differently. I've tested it. It's fine. Comments and photos, good thing. Comments and albums, pretty good. No formatting, no links, no mentioning people. It works slightly differently. It, puts over, lays it over the picture. Yeah, fine. Gee whiz, all wonderful.
Okay,
Whatever.
so before, like, up until like recently, back to whenever they had photos in Google Plus, which I think was the beginning, or at some point you could comment. Let's say I did a post with a slideshow, or not a slideshow, but a series of pictures, and you could comment on my post. Great post, Dan. I love all those elephant pictures. Or you could comment on any of the individual photos.
Right. Or
So
you could
that
comment
was
on the album. I think
and
you could comment on the album.
all of which
Maybe
would
not.
generate beloved notifications for the poster. So what is different? Are these going to revert to this new thing you're talking about? Because those photos are now Google Photos, right?
Well, no, of course not, because now we have both Google Plus Photos and Google Photos.
And two
Because,
separate commenting systems.
because they didn't want to make it actually easy or useful or not fucking brain dead.
You think they're so gun shy from the fail that was the Google Plus YouTube integration that now they're just going to just lock down and solidify all the individual silos, as Pam puts it? And God forbid there's any kind of
No.
integration. Are we back to like pre 9/11 U.S. intelligence
No, because
rules?
we've seen integration between these products. Location services, maps, and photos have some great integration going right now.
But they're
we
not
are
social
seeing-
components. They're not social components, like comments. Could be.
No, they're not. But but that's because they screwed up social. It's only their fourth time trying social, and they screwed it up. So who can blame them? Now, I think these changes are good. They're not great. They should have been there from the beginning. But really, hopefully, let's get the fuck rid of Google Plus Photos already.
I wonder if there was like a big
It,
Brazilian language, which would be Portuguese, I guess, blog show podcast about Orkut. They were all excited about Orkut. They talked about Orkut and new features of Orkut that week and everything. And then they just got rid of Orkut, and they look like it is. You think that happened? What if that happened? All right, so we're all excited about.
Dan, no, nothing. Never mind.
Okay, so Google News will now highlight local news sources for major stories. In the past, now this I am excited about. Not so much as a and our website, we actually switched, but it was and will be again in Google News. We went with another thing. It's a long story, but so let's say there's an incident, a hurricane hits somewhere, or a shooting, or good news, whatever it is. But this is more of an issue in breaking news that everyone's interested in all of a sudden. So let's say that how many times have you seen on CNN or Fox News a active shooter situation going on, or police are on the hunt for somebody who did something bad, and then I'll go and immediately I'm trying to, okay, who's the people on the street, right? Because CNN just found out about it from an AP Wire thing, so they don't know jack. And then Wolf Blitzer, how he can twist a paragraph from the AP, maybe 3 sentences, into like 90 minutes of non-commercial free coverage. He's the best at that. God bless him. But then you go to the actual like KTLA or whatever the local thing is, or maybe the local radio station, or the local newspaper, and you discover that there is no active shooter. Some guy shot his neighbor's dog, and it blew up. And they've an hour ago they said it wasn't an active shooter thing anymore, but CNN is just now breaking in with this. So before, they would rely on the most cited story, which may not at all be the most accurate or the most up-to-date source. If Mashable or CNN or the Washington Post or New York Times puts out a report about some breaking thing, it might be an hour behind or more the local news coverage, especially overseas. And anyway, I think this is cool. Do you have any thoughts on this, Alan?
Nope, you're the news guy.
Indeed. And a shout out to Brad, who's doing Tech Webcast tonight at techwebcast.info. The most exciting, most listened to tech podcast coming out of Australia, bar none, unless Wozniak starts doing something. Okay, so next up, I'm not even going to pretend that I have a clue what any of this shit is. So I'll be right back while Alan tells us. I'll try to read the sentence. Google announces SyntaxNet and Parsley McParcelface, a natural
That's
language.
Parsi.
Parsi,
Parseface.
not the vegetable, not the herb.
No, not the herb.
Google announces SyntaxNet and Parsi McParcyface, a natural language understanding and English parser that works with their TensorFlow neutral neural network AI system. At least I know it wasn't AL. I knew it was AI. So there's that. So Alan, don't leave anything out. Tell us all about this.
Okay, Dan. What this basically is, this is a software package that is smarter than you are.
Well, oh my God.
I realize that's not a huge challenge here.
It's a low bar.
But basically, one of the challenges in understanding, not in understanding the English language, is being able to look at, to break apart sentences and understand what they mean. So, we've learned how to do it, and we've learned how to, by we, I mean, people have learned how to do it over time. And we have some understanding and some context, and we know basically how to take sentences apart so they mean things. It's really tough for computers to do that, however. So previously, the success rate for parsing sentences was about 90%. They've gotten it up to about 95% with these tools. And that seems pretty low, to be honest. Humans are somewhat better at that. Humans can parse a sentence about 97, 98% of the time. So these they still have a ways to go, but these are some of the best tools that currently exist for computers to understand the English language. And the reason why this is important is because more and more we're relying on interfaces with our computers that are natural language interfaces. So instead of pushing buttons or clicking links, we're giving instructions to our computers. And this is very visible when you look at bots these days, chat bots. People actually think they're doing something with them, and they're not. They're piles of excrement, and mostly because they don't understand English very well. So this is one major step to letting these sorts of systems understand what we're asking them to do. We commonly think of things like, being able to say, okay, Hal, open the pod bay doors. How does Hal know what that means? And the answer is, he saw the movie, so he understands it's a cultural reference. But, normally, how does Hal understand what that means? So this is a major step. That's what it's doing. Expect to hear a lot about this sort of thing at I/O.
Couple comments. Cybernaut. I think it's about the news thing. A guy walking down the street with an airsoft rifle unintentionally shut down a bunch of schools here earlier in the week. Then he has a link. This is on the Google Plus Week page on Google Plus, and then he says computers never had Mrs. Ball as her 8th grade English teacher. That woman loved to diagram. I was very good at that. I wasn't good at the literature part. Like, what is the meaning of this book? But I was good at diagramming.
Diagramming is an important part. Part of the trick, though, is even once you've diagrammed it, how do you understand it? How do you, know that, my favorite example of this, for example, is if you listen to the Abbott and Costello routine, Who's on First? The entire skit is playing on the fact that these sentences and these words have more than one meaning. And depending on how you parse them, they have these different meanings. And that's the joke. That's the whole skit, is the fact that Abbott parses them one way when Costello is parsing them a different way.
It's funny, but it's educational. I think every school does that in a talent show or something. And then, it's diagramming, understanding, possession and modifiers, things like that, so you can get your singular versus plural right. But then, of course, you go across the pond in England, they do it differently. A company, we say a company has made this decision. They would say a company have. So it's different. My dad asked
but even there, that's not the real issue that we have in parsing English. I'm trying to see if I can find some of the great examples that they gave. And if I suggest people go read the article, because it really is very, not just the article, but Jonathan also had a great example discussing why it's so difficult. So, for example, one of the examples they give is the sentence, Alice drove down the street in her car. Now, parsing that, you can parse that in two different ways. You can either say that, you can either parse it as Alice is in her car and Alice in her car drove down the street. Or you could parse it as Alice drove down the street that was in her car. And obviously, us as humans, one of those makes sense and the other one makes less sense. I'll leave it as an exercise for the viewer to figure out which one makes more sense than the other. Dan, no cheating. We can check your answers later. If you think that's obvious to you, I could change one word, and how you need to parse that sentence is completely different. So instead of saying Alice drove down the street in her car, I could say Alice drove down the street in her town. And you now need to parse that sentence completely differently. That's challenging for a computer. And that's one of the things that hopefully this handles differently and handles better. And it can tell you which one makes the most sense. What is Alice actually doing?
It probably would be easier in a different language as well, because English has so many contradictions. And
Yes, but every language has their own quirks along these
yeah,
lines.
but nothing like, I mean, like Spanish versus English. Spanish is pretty much by the book. English, write the word to down. Write down the word to. How do you, is it which two?
But here's the thing. That's easy to parse.
Only in context.
But well, no. TO versus TOO versus TWO is easy to parse because they're three different words. A better example would be what the word READ means.
What do you mean?
Well, if I tell you what,
The word.
let me spell a word for you, and you tell me what the word is.
Oh, okay.
READ. What's the word?
Yeah, it's. You talking about parsing it like going verbal after you read it, or the reverse?
Well, I'm saying if I've got the text out there in front of me, understanding what that text means.
Yeah.
And it's not always obvious if I'm talking about using READ, if I'm talking that I am reading something in the present tense, or if I have read something in the past tense. And for that, you need more context in the sentence.
Because English. Do you know what word has the most definitions in English?
No, what word?
I think it's the word set. SET.
Okay.
Okay, next up is YouTube opens up 4K live streaming and 60p up to 13 megabits, and I'll be right back. I'm getting a knock.
Okay, so this is Dan saying, hey, here's this great new news. Alan, take it away, even though you have no clue what it's about. So thank you for that one, Dan. Jesus.
Yeah,
No, I
so this
honestly thought this
basically
was
is
going to be
role
your story
reversal.
here.
This is like the previous topic, and if you're like, oh, hang on, Dan, I'll be back. Okay, I'll be talking about parsley.
And for that matter, Dan linked to his own freaking post about it, so he better know something about this.
I don't
Because
know.
I sure
Okay,
don't.
here's the deal. So what Google is, I'll just, you can link to it. Yeah. So there's a 4K is a thing now. You go to Walmart or Costco or Best Buy, and now there are very few 1080p television sets. There's lots of 4K television sets. The internet has not caught up with it yet, nor has programming online, or there's no broadcast TV that's
Nor does
4K.
anybody who fucking cares.
Right. Until porn gets involved, then there'll be a market. But seriously, I mean, there's like House of Cards on Netflix, that sort of thing. But I mean, how many? It's just like when 3D first came out. How many times can you watch Avatar? Okay, it's cool, but oh my god. And I kind of get a headache in the theater. I mean, I enjoy it. Like I'll do it sometimes. Like Star Wars, I watched the last one here. I watched in 3D. But anyway, so now you can, when you're setting up like this show with you, this is YouTube live stream. You can now do 4K instead of just 1080p. I do 720p for several reasons, but you can do up to 4K, and you can also do 60 frames a second. Now, where that is cool is, let's say you were shooting a tennis match, or Craig's friend who does hula hoop stuff, hooping, in any kind of fast movement. 60 frames is great. 60 frame in recorded video is off. 60 or 120 frames or even 240 are used to do slow motion, so you don't lose anything. So like if you have 60 frames, you could shoot video of a kid throwing a ball or whatever, a dog chasing a car, leaping in the air, catching a frisbee, and then you could slow that from 60 to 30, which is what we normally watch, and you could slow it and put it at halftime, and you wouldn't lose any quality. It wouldn't be like a really, poorly pixelated, or whatever you call it, jagged, whatever the word is. So anyway, they've got this, but it's up to 13 megabits per second. So you've got to have some pretty good stuff. Like this is shooting in 720p meaning 720 dots this way and 1280 or whatever it is this way. This would be more. And this is at 4 megabits per second, which is the max you can do on YouTube Live for 720p. So it would be about 3 times this data. And then you got to find people who can watch it. I don't even have a 4K monitor. I don't think Alan does. Anybody with the new iMacs, the fancy ones, could watch it. And Craig Ship's dad loves, I think he's 70s or 80s. He has stopped watching everything except YouTube because he just loves 4K and he doesn't want to watch anything except 4K stuff. He's hooked. I think he's got the iMac with the 5K monitor and probably a 4K television. So he's all about watching some YouTube videos. And you can just find him looking for 4K UHD. So anyway, that happened. And then also I did a Civil War reenactment, and I linked to it here. I videotaped it. I had 2 reporters there and a photographer. So I was able to just play. And so I did the Facebook Live thing. And I've got 2 versions here. One is the version that actually broadcasts. It's the same thing. You could watch it live. And I had, I think, like 15 people watching at most at peak. And then now it's like 300 and something. And then it also, I had an option when I was done, the Facebook, you can do it in mentions or live or the Facebook app. I was doing it in mentions. And at the end, it said you want to save a high quality version. And I did. And then I uploaded that to YouTube. And I've got both linked under this video. You can see that. So it's pretty good. I mean, it's shaky because I was walking. This is the first year they'd ever done this. It was the Battle of Front Royal, which happened in 1862. At the end of the video, it's really good. You should watch it. The very end, like 7 or 8 minutes till the end, I talked to this expert. He's in a white shirt like this, and he's the local historian guy. And he talks about the battle and what happened, what it was like, and the danger, and what it was like that day in this little town. It's fascinating. He's really good. He knows his stuff, and those guys are a joy to listen to. So anyway, it's neat that I was able to walk the streets of Front Royal following the Civil War reenactors, and I was like 5 feet from them. I was right there. It was so loud, and the gun smoke, it was awesome. And I was able to share that with whomever who didn't know about it or couldn't make it or was just interested, maybe not local. And I had it's just incredible. I'm still amazed that in your phone is a satellite television truck now. It's not the same quality. It's not there yet, but it's incredible. And we wanted this years ago with Google. And now it's here, and it's Facebook, which is, in my opinion, the far superior way to do this. There's Periscope and other things, but Facebook has the footprint, and Zuckerberg's all excited about this, so they're pushing it. So anyway, that was fun. And have you been to a Civil War reenactment, Alan? I don't know how big that is in New York.
Not really, since we won the war.
Well, you didn't win the Battle of Front Royal.
And there were no actual battles up here.
Yeah.
I have been to a few Revolutionary War reenactments, however.
So anyway, 1,100 of your friends were here. 22 of them made it out. They got an ass whooping from Stonewall Jackson. So there.
I've walked Gettysburg, however, and as I recall, Stonewall didn't do quite so well there.
I think he was he the guy there? Wasn't he dead then? Yeah, he died. Or there stands Jackson like a stone wall. All right. Anyway, it was wild. I mean, it was a tragic war, and the guy mentions that we don't celebrate, we're commemorating this event. It was an awful thing that lots of people died, but it's really something to be there so close and to watch, their version of what happened. Okay, next is this story is just crazy. This is not Alan's favorite story. I wish George Cozy, if you're watching, please weigh in now or later. The EU to launch kettle and toaster crackdown after the Brexit vote. So apparently the European Union in their effort to combat man-made whatever climate change. They're going after the tea kettles, hair dryers, and toasters, among other things. Now it says they're going to ban them. They're not. The police are not going to come and confiscate your hair dryer. What they're going to do is ban the sale of appliances that are deemed to be especially egregious in their use of energy. And so one guy from the UKIP, a politician, the UK is the United Kingdom Independence Party, he tweeted that it took him 4 cycles to brown his toast enough to put marmalade on it. And just the outrage of that, such obviously a first world problem.
The terrible outrage. Man, I got to tell you, these UKIP people are the biggest idiots that I have ever heard. Truly, truly ignorant and I had a
I don't know
great term for
anything.
them.
Okay, tell me.
No, I had a fantastic term for them earlier, and I'm really trying to remember what it was. Hypocrites. That's the word I'm looking for. Hypocrites. Go ahead, Dan.
It was. I thought we could say like Dan McDermott esque. Just the worst possible. No.
Yeah.
So why do you like? Why do you not like the? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I talked to a guy, Tom Rogan, a Twitter friend. He's the young guy in the McLaughlin group, and I asked him about it because he grew up like I did overseas, and we both were in London, and I think at the same time. But he said economically it would be bad for Great Britain to leave, but it would like give them, the autonomy would be neat. And really, I could draw parallels to the U.S. The formation of the United States from a bunch of states, and some states were like I'm a Texan, I'm a Virginian, and then the Union formed, and then the UK is kind of going through that same thing.
Here's what well, you know what? I would say that about almost every other country in the EU. The UK, however, is different. And it's different because of that first word in the country's name. What's that word, Dan?
The United Kingdom, which is
Right,
different
it's the
from Great
United
Britain,
Kingdom.
which is different from the Commonwealth, which is different from England.
So it is what? So what is the full name of the UK?
The United
You
Kingdom
know?
of Great Britain and Ireland.
Okay, and what is Great Britain?
That it's same thing with Wales, I think.
No, it's Scotland is the other part of it. Okay, so
Okay.
about 2 years ago, there was a movement inside Scotland to separate from the United Kingdom. They wanted to be they already have a certain amount of autonomy. However, they wanted more autonomy because London has been ruling them too much and handing down too many decrees without full representation. And they were sick and tired of it, so they had this independence movement. And all of these people in London said, "You can't do that! You'll rip apart the fundamental foundation of blah, 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 blah." And so it lost. And now these same people that were all in hysterics before are now saying, "We've got to get out of the EU because they're handing down these decrees and we need our independence and blah, 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 blah." So they're fucking hypocrites. I'm sorry, fucking hypocrites.
It's the marmalade wars. In the end, it's all about the marmalade. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about it. I certainly wouldn't want some, Europeans in Brussels telling me what kind of hairdryer to buy. But a lot of folks would say that about the federal government.
Right, and I
in the
that
US.
reenactment. Actually, it's really good. That was a really good segue that you could have done a little bit better. Okay, we did fight a war about this, and we see, the feds won.
Just like in the Scotland case, and probably in this case, because in the end, a lot more is. I mean, if it's something like England's colonization of India, where people are totally being exploited and there's a real desire to be independent because they're really getting the shaft. That's one case, but it's not the case in the UK with Scotland or with the EU and England or Britain or the UK, or whoever's talking about. I guess Britain because it's called the Brexit, not the UK UKexit. So it's the larger group that includes Scotland and Wales. But in the end, I think these movements tend to get more publicity than they might otherwise deserve because it's such big news and so fascinating. What would happen if they left? It's a big story. And in the end, people are like, you know what? There's fear of change. There's all these people saying if we do this, it's going to screw us economically. It's not so bad the way it is. And it's a safer bet to just keep it the way it is than to risk the hell that they're promising if we break up. And so that's why I think Scotland stayed, and that's why the UK will probably stay. I could be wrong, but what do you think? It's a safer course, if it ain't broke. Now, the immigration thing could change it, right? And now, like some countries are taking immigrants or the refugees from the Middle East conflict, and it's important to know that these are not permanent settlements in most cases or many cases. These are temporarily until they can settle down and then they can go back. That's why they're in camps and they're not like totally ingratiated into the society. But that if that blows up, and some countries that don't take them, they have to pay money to the EU to subsidize the countries that are taking them. So and I think China and the U.S. both want the EU to stay intact. They say it's better. I don't understand it that well, so I can't. I have no opinion. I don't care.
Basically, it means that both China and the U.S. have only one trading partner they need to negotiate with, instead of what are they up to now? 20 some odd trading
Gotcha.
partners. So it makes it easier.
And some countries benefit, and some, may feel that
Well,
they don't.
presumably they all benefit.
I don't know. I mean, when Germany's financing everybody else,
Okay, so that means everybody benefits.
except the Germans. But
Oh, come on. No, 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 no. Do you understand how financing everybody else works?
yeah, it depends if they pay you back.
Well, yeah, but it means you have them on the hook to pay you back.
Yeah.
So they benefit from that. Oh, yeah, they benefit from that.
Greece definitely benefits from the European Union, although that's what caused once the drachma, it was the euro, and then all of a sudden they could borrow money on the strength of the euro versus the drachma, and that's what caused them to just go on a spending spree and their financial turmoil that they're currently in. Okay, so this other story that was really interesting, and I don't know if it's BS or not. I sincerely saying, but it makes some sense. It says that humans have basically had the same lifespan for 2,000 years. And we've talked before about, what was the thing that doubled the human, not American, but the human lifespan or life expectancy. And it was hygiene, washing your hands, cleaning up a wound, that sort of thing. So anyway, this article argues that people have lived about in their 70s forever. I mean, Socrates, Ben Franklin was like, what, 90 or something? And that it's the infant mortality rate that has gone down significantly due to advances in things like hygiene and medicine, whatever. That if you don't factor that in, that humans basically can live to an old age from probably caveman days till now, just like animals in captivity live longer or whatever because they're safer. Do you think there's anything to that?
I mean, well, first of all, I want to make note that this comes at a very interesting time, that only today we learned that Susanna Jones has died. And if you don't understand that, do you know who Susanna Jones is, Dan?
I do not, unfortunately.
Susanna Jones was, until she died, the world's oldest living person.
How old was she?
116 at the time of her death.
I knew a 109-year-old, but not that old.
And she The previous holder of the record was 117 when she died. Um,
Do we know when they first started taking that record, what the age was? I mean, has that age gone up? There's always some oldest.
I don't know offhand, but I think that's one of the points that I wish to make is yes, I think infant mortality does play somewhat into the calculations, but this is the actual problem that we have in using what we would a mean age. Um, if you think of a curve, it now means that we've skewed the age of that mean higher. But what we really also want to measure at the same time is the standard deviation. How far off of that are we getting? Um, are we, is the average age going up both because we're increasing it on the lower level, but are we also increasing it on the upper level? And I think we are. So, the article talks about how Plato lived till he was 70. And hey, that's great. But how many other people of his time lived to 70? Was it just the elites that were living that long? Were non-elites living that long? Nowadays, are people in the lowest classes, how long are they living compared to 50 or 100 years ago? It's not a straightforward question and answer, and he just addresses one really tiny part of it.
And also
I,
that he draws the, I think the anecdotes in this piece where he says there are some African countries where the official average life expectancy is like 19 because in fact there's a tremendously high infant mortality rate. That doesn't mean that everyone's dying at 20. There are plenty of people 50, 60, 70 years old. So it's kind of like if you make it to a certain point, if you make it into your teens or your 30s or 50s, like if you make it in the US, if you make it to like 50 or 60, you're probably going to live 20 or 30 more years.
well, but that's the question. Are you? And I would argue, and I don't have the numbers handy. I don't. But I would argue that you're not saying that. What we are saying is that there are more people who are making it further if they make it to their 40s. But we are still seeing a tremendous number of deaths of people in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And I think the question then is, well, what's the differentiator? Is it income level? Is it race? What are those differentiators? And those are very, very valid and important questions. If you're looking at, if you're um, if you're a statistician, you're grinning, Dan. What are you grinning at?
At size comment. He said, I said set, the word set has the most definitions. And he corrected me. He said dictionary has the most definitions. Duh. Size, dry, wit. Okay, so that's an interesting read. It's not a long read either. Okay, so now this story, and welcome to Michael Daniels. Good to have you in a coveted seat watching our program tonight. So anyway, this story, this kid, I guess he's 15 years old, and it went viral. 15-year-old, he decides that he's studying maps of ancient Mayan civilizations. So I guess the Mayans were in Mexico, and my sister and my niece just went to Peru to look at Inca sites. So the Incas were further south. The Mayans were Mexico, or that area. Anyway, so this kid looks at the charts, the star charts, and he finds a correlation between the layout of and location of Mayan presence sites and sees that there's a match. And so he gets with I think he was in Canada, he gets with the Canadian Satellite Imagery Government Agency, gets them to like check out some places. He says, I think there's a thing here. And then the news stories went out that he located a lost Mayan city by gazing at the stars, and he was a whiz kid. So he had literally like a day of fame before subsequent round of stories came out saying it could perhaps be a pot field, and that there are the argument is there are so many Mayan things. There were a lot of Mayans, and there were so many Mayan, villages or cities or whatever, that you could superimpose any star map anywhere in that region and populate something near a site of Mayan presence back in the day. So I guess it was just too good to be true. Do you have an opinion? Do you think you found a lost Mayan civilization site? Or you so couldn't care about this story?
No, I think it's an interesting story. I just don't have much to say about it.
My money is on a pot field. Okay, so Alan, how was your week? You said it was
Crappy.
splendid.
It was a crappy week. I've had worse, but it was a crappy week. I am getting ready to head to I/O, so that's the good part. I think I don't know. It's going to be an interesting show an interesting conference this year.
You said you were going to troll the Hyperloop.
Oh yeah, yeah. Their story. They got one segment, and by a segment, I think they mean a dozen or so feet of the Hyperloop working. Yeah, sure, whatever. I'm still not enthused about this technology. It's incredibly. I mean, it's technology that's basically 100 years old and it was abandoned 100 years ago for good reason. Um,
Well,
I
Michelangelo wrote a bunch of drawings that are feasible today that weren't in his day.
It's not the
Didn't he
feasibility
create an
aspect.
airplane on paper?
Dan, do you know what a pneumatic tube is?
It's a tube and it's pneumatic.
So
Duh.
no, you have no fucking clue what a pneumatic tube is.
I forget what pneumatic means. I know it starts with a P. I can spell it.
Very good. The pneumatic tubes basically is this device that would creates a suction inside a tube. You'd open it up, you'd stick the capsule into it, you close it. The tube gets sucked off to the other end of the.
Oh, a bank
Um,
tube.
yeah, banks used to use them all the time. Costco's uses them these days. Okay, that's basically what the hell a hyperloop is.
However, if you breach the tube, it would not. The occupants would not fare well.
Yeah, well, that's what a hyperloop is.
Yeah, that's the issue. There's a
There are a
minor
lot of
concern.
there are a lot of issues. The biggest one is that it's really a point-to-point transportation system. And mass transit doesn't, I mean, these days, having a point-to-point mass transit system doesn't really get you a lot.
You don't need to buy the land, right? You just need to buy points of
No,
land where
what do
you
you mean
can
you don't
run.
need to buy the land? What the hell are you going to build this thing on then?
It can be in the air. So it could be suspended in the air. It could be on. In other words, it could be like one bridge. Like a bridge is done, like the Golden Gate Bridge. There's posts, right? So you only need to buy the posts because couldn't they condemn the air above it or whatever? I don't think you owe the air above it, but it depends what country you're in. In the U.S., you owe more air. I think it's like 600 feet above your house, and in the
Dan,
inland, it's
Dan,
like 30
focus
feet.
here, focus.
I'm
So
saying it logistically.
you still
That's
need to
the
build this on something. If you're going to build, if you're going to suspend it in the air, you still need the right of way where you're putting the pylons. So, okay, so we can run it down the median of a highway. That's great. You still need to run it down the median of, I-95, though.
and that is not a straight line.
Right. And so, okay, so let's even assume more or less of a straight line. Okay, let's assume that I-95 was a straight line. It still means that you're going to either, if you're going from DC to New York, that means either you're only going from DC to New York, or you're creating a whole bunch of little stops in between, which are now getting you inefficiencies. Let's even go better. So if you really this is useful when you're talking, say, New York to San Francisco, currently a 6 fucking hour flight. Okay, are you going to be able to get the Hyperloop to go over 500 miles an hour? Because if you're not really getting the speed down. You're not really getting the performance down. So I just don't see how this is in any way vaguely useful. It doesn't address any of the transportation problems we actually have today.
Um, there are, I mean, obviously, like in the inner city of New York, it would not be practical because you can't have a straight line of any length without intruding on existing.
Sure, you can. Have you looked at the New York subway system? Do you know how they built the New York subway system?
I guess they dug a hole.
Pretty much, they basically dug up the streets and put the subway underneath it and then filled it in.
Is it straight?
Yeah,
Do
it's
you,
literally straight underneath the streets. I mean, there are exceptions, but that's pretty much what it does.
okay.
But even more to the point, I mean, when I was talking about this technology has been around 100 years, I was serious. We've used they had a pneumatic tube subway system in New York. That was the first one. They got rid of it because it was a pain in the ass to use, and it worked between 2 points.
How,
This is not this. It seems like it's cool technology, but it's not. It solves no problems. It doesn't solve the inner city problem. It doesn't solve the intra-city problem. It doesn't replace anything. It's not fucking useful.
yeah, I mean, I still like my car. If I was going to DC, I could drive there, and or I could take the metro. The metro would take far longer. Then you got to go to the closest metro station here, which is like an hour away. Like I leave my car there. There's a traffic jam to get in and to get out. You got to pay for parking. You got to get on the metro.
Well, the big reason why the metro would take far longer in DC is because you've got about a 75% chance that it's not actually working when you
Yeah,
want to go use it. But that's because that's the DC metro these days.
yeah. Okay, so all right. So that was
But I
your.
mean, the chance of you having a track fire there is incredibly high. But here's the thing: what if you've got a fire inside your Hyperloop? Man, you're screwed.
But the Titanic is unsinkable. The Hyperloop can't burn. The only way they could make it super safe is if they did it like underground or encased it in cement or something. And then what if there's an earthquake? I don't know.
We do know how to deal with earthquakes.
Don't be the first guy to test the new tube thing. All right. So my week was we got the paper out.
We didn't even really finish talking about I/O. There's a lot of
Oh yeah. Go
I/O
ahead.
is going to be. I hope I/O is cool. I really do hope people tune in. Um, the VR thing has gotten all the news. I'm still hoping we get some other really good surprises coming, because I don't think VR is going to be all that cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
that's
mean,
not
it's
true. It's
fun.
cool, but we've had cardboard for 2 years now. You got to blow me out of the water with something better than cardboard.
Yeah. I use cardboard or like showing it off to somebody. That's about it. I've used it like 3 times. Okay. So have fun at I/O. Let us know how it's going.
I'll try to check in. Let's see. Yeah, no, it should be over Friday by 4, so I will try to check in next Friday.
And even if you
With the
get
wrap
like you
up.
can't broadcast, you could record something on your phone. Like if you see someone you want to do a quick interview or something, post it and I'll share it. I'll share your post or whatever. If there's something cool you want to share with us, please do. So, all right, I got the paper done. It's on our issue thing. Our sites are having issues, and they're printing it in a few hours. So that's good. That's done. And then it's a good issue. It has a really good cover photo of from the Civil War reenactment. So I got my first Audible review, Alan. Just so you know, I got 4 stars on performance for the book about living in a motorhome. So that was cool. Michael Tucker said, "Did you see Sarah Hill's report in the Washington Post?" I didn't, but I'll check that out. Sarah Hill's our friend, formerly with KOMO, and now
Uh,
she then Veterans United, and I forget what she's doing now.
No, she left Veterans United, and now
Right.
she's doing VR journalism. So I'm assuming whatever she had in the post is about her VR journalism or about her veterans project about getting veterans to be able to use VR and see their monuments.
That's awesome. And yeah, she's been an early advocate for VR slash remote broadcasting slash accessibility. A combination especially suited for our aging veterans. So good for Sarah and the work she does. I put Windows 10 on my streaming computer and my laptop as an experiment. I upgraded both from 7 to 10, and then I downgraded back to 7 on the main computer because I couldn't get my audio card to work. I've since discovered they said just download the driver again, it'll work. And the laptop that Alan's on is Windows 10. So it's working on the laptop. I may upgrade it, but I'm still not sure. Alan, I don't know if one thing was it seemed like it was revving the CPU fan a lot with 10, but that could be it was downloading a bunch of crap that always happens whenever a new operating system is installed, right? So I think I need to leave it for a few days to see if it really is faster or more. I mean, do we know if it's more efficient and less taxing than 7? Have you heard anything on that?
I have no I have no clue. It's Windows.
Yeah. So, and then the last thing is I'm excited. I've got I'm doing Audible books and commercials and stuff, and so I am getting a new mic, a high end, some stuff. I've got pretty high end stuff anyway, but I'm getting a Vintech preamp, and I'm getting a compressor called a distressor, and so I'm excited about that. So I'll sound even more betterer than Alan to speak in the King's English. Okay, anyway, anything else, Alan? Are we good?
Yeah, no, I'm looking at this Sarah Hill post. This is actually a really good. The title of it is a 360-degree immersion showing what it's like to live without mobility in Zambia. Looks like some really good stuff, some really good video going here too.
Cool.
So kudos to Sarah Hill.
Did she do it as a contributor, or she wrote it, or it was about her?
She has the byline.
Cool. Awesome. Good for Sarah, because she certainly, she comes from a journalism background. Michael points out it was KOMU it was Missouri State University or something. She was near Kansas City, I
forget,
think.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hill's reporting has taken her team around the world, covering stories about the human spirit in Vietnam, Guatemala, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and now Zambia.
Awesome.
And hey, in the credits for the article, Sarah Hill's a 20-year veteran of the broadcast industry. Before starting Story Up, she built a successful TV feature franchise and the world's first interactive news program based on Google Hangouts.
Oh yeah.
So she's still giving credits to this media.
And she appeared on our former program a couple of times. All right, so awesome. Good for Sarah. Okay, cool. So let me see if there's any last bits of wisdom. I was hoping that George Cozy would troll me about the Brexit story and those wacky Euro fascists trying to prevent people from enjoying the marmalade they've earned in the first world that is the United Kingdom. But alas, I shall continue to want. Okay, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Alan, for finally gracing us with your presence, despite a taxing week for you. So anyway. All right, so thank you all for commenting. Thanks for watching. The McDermott Report is most Fridays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Most Fridays at around 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. We'll see you next time. Until then, have a wonderful week.